Now, we spoke about living, non-living. We need to learn some spellings. We learned a lovely poem, teapot, tadpole, and that's very interesting for you. Now, when it comes to writing, you need to learn some words that will help you in your writing a sentence about the living and the non-living things. So, word wall. Yes? So, now, here is a huge tree. All right? Yeah. Here's the tree, a big tree for you. Now, there are some words that is useful for us in our writing of sentence about living, non-living. Now, what are they? Can you tell me? Living things feel. So the word feel. Okay? Feel. Must learn the spelling of feel. Next. Grow. Very good. Grow. Yes. Breathe. Very good. Breathe. Then what else you do? Eat. Move. You move from one place to another. Move. Eat. Drink. Then what else? Young ones. Young ones. Have young ones. So, these spellings we need to remember while writing sentences. Okay? So, that is feel, grow, breathe, eat, move, and have young one. Now, this is your word wall. What is the word wall? Spellings to be learned that will help you in your exercise. Now, we are talking about again living things. In detail, we're going to look at living things. We said and we learned living things, they feel, they breathe, they move, eat, drink, and have young ones. Now, living things move from one place to another. That's the first point. You and I, we can move from one place to another. Living things. Living things move from one place to another. You move, animals move, birds fly away, pussycats move from one place. But in the case of plant, it does not move from one place to another, but with the wind, it does sway. The branches and the leaves move in the case of plants. So, living things move from one place to another. Now, what are these living things? First of all, number one, human. Human. We are man. Okay? When you say man, woman, human. Then, what's the other living thing? You say your pussycat, yes? Cat. or any other. Any animal. I put down cat, but any animal, wild or domestic or anything. It can move from one place to another, run, jump about. Bird. What about the bird? All birds, big or small. All birds, big or small, they fly about. They can move from one place to another. They grow, they eat, they feel. They can have young ones. Okay, now what about the tiny little worm or snail? This tiny little worm in your garden. Okay, the worm. It moves, it feels, it grows, it eats, it has young ones. Finally, what about the little butterfly in your garden? You look at the butterfly in your garden. The butterfly feels, it grows. Okay? It grows, it eats. Then it has babies, eats and drinks. So when I say butterfly, all insects. When I say the worm, all the tiny animals that you find in the garden. When I say bird, all big and small birds, all the birds that big birds like the ostrich, the tiny sparrow, animals, all animals, big, small, wild and domestic, and finally human, mom and dad, grandpa, grandma, you and I. So we are all living things. We move from one place to another. Okay, now, living things have young ones. The next point we are remembering is living things. The sentence you must learn. Living things have young ones. Young ones. That's the next thing we have to remember. So living things move from one place to another. Living things have young ones. Okay, now you say, now what about mama has a baby? So you'll say, mama has a baby, tiny baby. Cat. What about the cat? The big mama cat has a kitten. Fine. What about the bird? The bird. Birds have chicks. Then, worm. They have tiny worms. Butterfly. They lay tiny eggs and it becomes a butterfly finally. So, mama has baby, cat and dog. They have kitten. Now, let us say cat, kitten. Now, if you say cow, a cow has a calf. Cow has a calf. The baby cow is called a calf. Okay, what about your dog, the little dog that you have at home? What do you call the baby dog? It has a baby. That's called a pup. Very good. All animals have young ones and their babies are called differently. Now, okay? Now, supposing you say hen. The hen gives you egg. What will you say? Hen, chick or chicken. Tiny chick. Okay, that big elephant. What about the elephant? What will you call the baby elephant? You call the baby elephant calf. Then, what about Horse. Horse. Horse has a baby and we call the baby a foal. Okay? Then what else? Duck. Very good. A duck. Mama duck has got a baby called duckling. What about the pig? Duckling, pig, piglet, and so on. Living things have young ones, and each of those young ones have different names. Dogs, puppy, cat, kitten, and so on. So, word wall you have to learn. You have to learn the spelling of feel, grow, breathe, eat, move, drink, have young one. This will help us in our writing of sentences. Living things move from one place to another. Man, cat, bird, worm, but all these people can move from one place to another, but the tree can only sway in the strong breeze. Living things have young ones. Mama has a baby, hen has a chick, elephant has a calf, cat has got kitten, cow has got calf, dog has a pup, birds have chicks, horse has a foal, and so on. Duck has a duckling, if it is pig, it's got a piglet, and so on. So, next thing is living things, they feel. All of them, they feel, they breathe, they drink and eat and grow. So that's all about living. When you talk about living thing, think of all what you do. You can do. You can feel, you can breathe, you can drink, you can eat, you grow, and you can move from one place to another, and you can have young ones. We are still talking about the living things. We said the living things, they move from one place to another. They can have young ones. Now, another point that you need to remember. So one sentence is, living things move from one place to another. So you learned one sentence. Second sentence you learned is, living things have young ones. Now, when you talk about living things, the tree. Tree is a living thing. Now, where does the tree live? In the soil. Okay? The tree lives in the soil. Sand. What is soil? And in the soil, there is water. The tree has its root in the soil and it gets water. It drinks water. The root will take the water, minerals. So, soil and water helps the tree, plants to grow. So, that point you have to remember. Soil and water, soil and water helps the plants to grow. So, 3 sentences we learned to write in the living things. When you say the living things move from one place to another. Living things have young one. And third one, soil and water help the plants to grow. These 3 things we must remember. Then, when the soil and water help the plants to grow, what do you get? You and I. We get food. The tree, the plant grows big. If it's an apple tree, you get apple, you get mangoes, you get vegetables. So, the next point that we need to remember, learn to write the sentences, we get food from plants. Very good. We get food from plants. That is another point you need to remember. Soil and water helps the plants to grow. We get food from plant. Now, what food you get? What is the food that you get from the plants? When you say food, what food is that? One, all fruits, vegetables, and greens. So what does the plant, what does the soil and water do? Help the plant to grow. And what do we get? We get food from plant. What is that food? Fruits, vegetables, greens. Okay. Now, other than this, we talk about animals, birds, all other insects, humans, plants. But remember, in the big ocean, in the rivers and ponds, there are tiny creatures living. They're also living things. So, there are many living things in the water, in the sea. There are many living things in the sea. When I say sea, other water body also. Now, there are many living things in the big sea. Like, can you name some of them? Other than fishes, you have seahorse, octopus, big whales, tiny things, all kinds of things. So now, we must learn. Now, they're also, the things that live in the sea are also food for you and me. Now, what is the seafood you like to eat? What is that food? The sea also gives us food. What is that? Fish. Name them. Crab, very good. Fishes and crabs. What about the huge whale? Very good. You do not eat, but the whale lives there. Then what are the fish? Turtle. Turtle. Seahorse, very good. Seahorse. Okay, you eat the fish, you eat the crab. But the whale, the turtle, the seahorse, and all other tiny fishes, they make the water in the sea a very interesting, colorful place. Okay, so now these things we need to remember. We are still talking about the living things. Living things move from one place to another. You and I move. Living things reproduce and have young ones. All birds, animals, and humans have young ones. And the next point, soil and water helps the plants to grow, and we get food from the plants, like fruits and vegetables and all greens from the plants. Now, there are many living things in the big, wide ocean. Some of them are food for us, like fishes and crabs and prawns. Then there are other huge whales, there are turtles, there are seahorses and octopus and whatnot in the water. And there are many other colorful fishes in the sea. So this is all about living things. Living things are there in the water. Living things are there in your garden, and you and I. And what you see flying in the sky, butterflies in the garden, and the animals that live in your house, animals that live in the forest, they're all living things. They breathe, they grow, they feel, They move from one place to another and they have young ones. So far, we spoke about living things. Now, I am sure you are very clear about who is a living thing. What does the living thing do? What are the things you can do? Whatever you do, you are a living. Similarly, watch the plants and the animals, things around. Now, we're going to look at non-living things. All the things in your house, all your little treasures. Look at that. What is it? Non-living thing. What about the non-living thing? They do not move. They do not grow. They do not have young ones. So we are going to do now, look at non-living things. Non-living things. Now, what about the non-living things? One, they do not grow. They cannot grow. Two, they do not move. You have to move it. And finally, they do not have young ones. They do not have young ones. We must remember this. Now, a book is a book a living and non-living? Book is a non-living, isn't it? So here I have a book for you. Now, they do not grow, they do not move, and they do not have young ones. That's what we need to remember in the non-living thing. Now, in the word wall, you must learn this. Grow, move, they do not move, young ones. So this is the three word that we must remember in the word wall: grow, move, do not have young one, in the non-living things. Okay, now, what are these non-living things? When you say they do not move, what are they? Name some non-living things. Okay, now, first of all, book. I've done a book for you here. Book. Is the book a living thing? No. So, book. Okay. Now, what about the car you travel in? Your car. Is it living or non-living? It can move, no? Yet. Car is a non-living. What about the doll you have? You do have a doll. Your toy. All these are not living. What about the table? You have a chair. Your chair, then table. What about your table? It's a non-living thing. What about the fan in your room? The fan in your room is a non-living thing. Fan. What about the airplane, the bus? Okay? What else? What else? Bottle, rubber, your gate. Okay, all these are non living things. Okay. Now, when you talk about non living, they don't grow, they don't move, they don't have young ones. All right. Now, what about the ship? It sails in the sea. What about the big ship? Ship is also a non living thing, doesn't grow, doesn't move, doesn't have young ones. Okay. Now, here I want you, we'll do a small exercise on non living thing. Tick. The non living things. You like to tick? Yes, you know what are non living things? Now let's do some ticking of the non living things that I will do for you. A short exercise for you. One, let's say a key. Okay, you have a key here, and I have a box for you. You have a bird here. You have to tick is it living or non-living. Then you have a tree here. Is it a living or non-living? Then you have pot here. You have a tiny little pot, and then you say it's a living or non-living. Then you have a brush. A brush. Is it a living or non-living? Then you have a cat here. Is it living or non-living? You have a water bottle here. Your water bottle, is it a living or non-living? You have a boy here. This boy, living or non-living? You have a pen here or a pencil. A pencil here. Is it a living or non-living? You have a chair here. Is it a living or non-living? Then you have an eraser here. Then you have a bangle here. Now we're going to take the non-living. What are non-living? Non-living things do not grow, move, or have young one. Book. It doesn't move, doesn't grow, doesn't have young one. Car. It doesn't move, doesn't grow, doesn't have young one. Doll. Chair. It doesn't grow, it doesn't move, doesn't have young one. Table. Fan. Airplane. Ship. It doesn't grow, it doesn't move, doesn't have young one. Now we are going to do an exercise. Tick, the non-living thing. Here, a key. A key, is it a non-living thing? Yes, because it doesn't grow, it doesn't move, it doesn't have young ones. Good. Bird. Bird grows, move, have young one, so it is not a non-living thing. Now let's go into the tree. Tree grows, it moves, it can have young one, so it is not a living thing. Pot. The pot grow? No, it cannot grow, it cannot move, it cannot have young ones. A pot is a non-living thing. Now, brush that you brush the floor with. Brush, it doesn't grow, it doesn't move, and it doesn't have young ones. Cat. The cat can grow, it can move, it can have young one. It is not a non-living, it is a living thing. Eraser you use for rubbing the things in your book. It cannot grow, it cannot move, it cannot have young one. Eraser is a non-living. Now, what about your bottle? The water bottle it cannot grow, it cannot move, and it cannot have young ones, non-living thing. Now, what about the boy? The boy can grow, it can move, it can have young one. The boy is not a non-living, it's a living. Pencil. A pencil cannot grow, cannot move, cannot have young one. So pencil is a non-living thing. The chair in your house. The chair cannot grow, it cannot move, it cannot have young one. It is a non-living. And finally, the ring. Ring cannot grow, it cannot have young ones, it cannot move, it's a non-living. Now, the key, the pot, the brush, the eraser, ring, chair, pencil, and water bottle, they are all non-living things. Okay?